So we're in Appendix 7A towards the end of the chapter, and the question is, what do we need to know about cash controls? The answer is a lot more than we learn in this chapter, especially if you're planning to go into business for yourself, or if you're going to be in charge of cash, working for somebody else. Cash is the easiest asset to go missing, and you don't want to have that happen to you. You don't want to have, what was it, 7.8 million overpayment of a dividend by manufacturers Hanover. That's kind of a big cash mistake. So it's good to have a fundamental understanding of how cash works and how to keep it from being misappropriated or stolen. Okay, so control of cash receipts. There's a lot of basic office procedures that you do. You stamp a check for deposit only. You have that separation of duties where you have someone other than the bookkeeper open the mail and list all your cash receipts. Basic idea is to keep the handling of the cash separate from the recording of the cash. Frequent bank deposits, don't leave a lot of cash hanging around. And you post the cash receipts to accounts receivable right away. Okay, so disbursements, all of the disbursements or check payments from a company should be done by check, except for petty cash, and that we'll get into that system. Pre-numbered check, that's your documentation procedures. You don't want to just have unnumbered checks. And you need someone other than the bookkeeper signing the checks so that unauthorized checks are not sent out. You get into what's called the voucher system and all of that, just to ensure that the payments are made properly. Okay, so you need a few terms. Collection float, that's the difference in the deposits per the company books compared to what the bank has actually received. Your goal is to minimize that, and so companies will have different ways of, if they have multiple branches across the country, maybe they'll have lock boxes, or separate checking accounts where deposits are made closer to the actual, where the checks are received, so that they minimize that collection float. So a lockbox account is something you need to be familiar with the term. Company has all of their payments mailed to a lockbox in a specific area, and then a local bank is authorized to pick up payments from those lockboxes and deposit them each day, week, or whatever is appropriate. Okay, so we know what a general checking account is. That's what we've been working with all along here. That's where most of your transactions are recorded. And then the term impressed. That's not like you're really impressed by somebody, but it's an IMPREST, bank accounts. And these are just ones that are set up for a specific purpose. So you could have your payroll bank accounts, your dividend bank accounts. The one we'll get into the details of are petty cash. Okay, so let's see, what else do we need to know? Physical controls, they're pretty basic, but you keep a minimum amount of cash on hand. That way, not that much can go missing. Deposit your checks often. One thing that you might not think about is the blank checks, the company's checks that you're waiting to use. A lot of times they'll just be kept on a shelf. Someone could go into that shelf, pull out a few checks from the middle of the pile, and go write checks to themselves. So you want to make sure that the blank checks are locked up, just as a matter of precaution. Okay, so where do you go to find out what you really need to know about all these cash controls if you're actually running your own business? You can look in the, I think that's articles and links section on Blackboard. I've got the Small Business Guide to Internal Control from the SEC, and as well as a few interesting articles on major failures of internal control. But that Small Business Guide is really good. It gives you sort of specifically exactly what needs to happen if you want to go more into the real world with this. What you're responsible for is really just kind of the basics that are in the text. The AICPA has a checklist for internal controls, which is helpful, and then you can also, Sarbanes-Oxley has other, there's a lot of resources out there. Okay, so we're going to look at two specific internal control mechanisms related to cash, and there'll be a couple of more videos on these. We'll do the petty cash system and bank reconciliation. These should be review, pretty much review for most of you, but for those of you who did not have me for AC 101 or 102, I'll show you a really cool way to do the bank rec that's a lot easier than Wiley. Right. At least I think so.